among slave owners and their enslaved mistresses. And just briefly, I found out that this resort existed while reading a biography of W.E.B. Du Bois by David Levering Lewis, and I was very intrigued by his historical footnote. I began to research the resort, and although I found a lot of evidence that the resort existed and that it closed after 4 years because the northern abolitionists who frequented it were offended by the presence of the southerners, I couldn't find anything left behind by the women because, as you know, most slave women weren't literate, and even those who were very rarely left behind written materials. So I began to imagine what it would have been like to be a slave woman taken to a free state post-1850 Fugitive Slave Act. And the first question I had was, you're in Ohio, why wouldn't they run? And so then I began to imagine that maybe their owners had some kind of psychological hold over them other than chains. And so then I took the next leap and I asked, is it possible that a slave woman could be in love with her master? It was the same question I had of Sally Hemings and Thomas Jefferson when I heard about that relationship. So my main character's name is Lizzie, and she actually believes that she is in love with her master. And I'm going to read a little bit about, from the scene of the first time that he takes her. When she's 13 years old. At first, he told her he just wanted to touch her tiny breast. Then he said he just wanted to place his hand on her hip. At first, he asked to touch her. Later, he did not. Each touch was like a payment for his kindnesses. She waited for him without clothes because he liked her that way. He said he wanted to drink her. He stared as if her 13-year-old body held a great secret, a miracle milk that would cure him if he drank of it only once. He seemed to savor each night, the anticipation arousing him to a point that stretched his penis as taut as a pig's belly. She gathered a stockpile of books, precious gifts from him, and hid them behind flour sacks in the storeroom. She couldn't read most of them yet, but she enjoyed turning the pages, fingering each book's binding, making out the page numbers as she learned how to count and figure. He told her to call him Drayle, his last name only. Most of the slaves called him Master. He asked her to drop the title. At first, she couldn't bring herself to do it. She felt if she dropped it, he would take the final step and hurt her in the way she hoped he wouldn't. He asked her if she had a wish and taught her the word genie. She said she'd once heard she had a sister, somewhere close by, her only living blood relation that she knew of. Could he find her? He promised with a serious face. She believed him and permitted him an extra touch. He said he enjoyed teaching her to read because she had a keen intellect. She liked the word keen and turned it over in her mouth. She realized her phonetic ability to sound out words. He appeared to have endless patience as she mouthed the words on the page with her lips before saying them. He only interrupted to remind her to lower her voice. The nights were quiet, and they remained undisturbed in their secret meetings. He had been educated in the North, and she admired his knowledge. When she had no more room to store her books, he brought her food. She enjoyed the food more than she had thought she would. She already ate better than the field slaves, but he showed her there was even more food to discover. He brought her cocoa, which she mixed with hot milk and sugar in the dark kitchen. They drank it together, sucking its thick sweetness with their tongues. He brought her Johnny cakes from town, and she made a gravy to go with them. They devoured them, licking the gravy from their lips. When he learned how much she craved sugar, he used it to tease her. When he didn't have any more sweets, she stole sugar cubes from the kitchen and sucked on it while she worked. The summer stretched into August, I'm skipping here, and work around the farm picked up as the season for cotton began. Drayle came to the storeroom less and less and gave fewer gifts. Lizzie was relieved she had escaped unharmed. She believed she had been like a toy to Drayle, and he was now tired of playing with her. He gave her no explanation as to why he stopped coming, but she saw how hard he was working. It was the first time she had examined the great muscles in his back and the texture of his face. He was built like a slave, only white. She was enchanted by the color of his eyes. And then she discovered something she had never before seen in her life, a mirror. She had seen her reflection in the nearby pond many times, but this piece of glass was magical. It was in Fran's bedroom, and each time she passed it, she found herself pausing to get a good look at herself. She stole a brush from Fran's drawer, stripped the hairs from it, and boiled it. She tried to brush out her knots. It took her 3 days of brushing and cutting the tangles. But when she was finished, she discovered she had a mound of hair that hung in frazzled coils around her face. She made excuses to be in Fran's room every chance she got. There was only one other slave woman who lived in the house. Lizzie sensed the older woman's demeanor began to change toward her a few weeks after Drell began visiting her at night. Not long after his visits subsided, Lizzie found Desi in the storeroom, holding the brush in her hand as if it were a giant vermin. Lizzie tried to figure out how she could have forgotten to put it away. "Where you get this from, Liza?" "My name be Lizzie," she said. Desi had lived in the house attic for years. Lizzie knew her from the shape of her back, a form she was used to seeing bent over a tub or the fire in the kitchen. Her face looked as if it had been pretty once. "Give it," Lizzie said, her lip twitching. "Not unless you tell me where you got it. Is you a plum fool, girl?" She started toward her, but something in Desi's posture stopped her. Lizzie was certain that had she been within arm's reach, the woman would have knocked her in the head with the brush. "You don't know what you done brung in this house," Desi said, setting the brush on the shelf with a clap. Lizzie moved to the side as the older woman stooped again and walked past her. "You don't know what you done brung in here," she repeated as she scooted through the kitchen. Lizzie was too frightened to move. Desi knew. She was sure of it. She wanted to tell her that she hadn't asked Drell to come in the first place, and he had stopped coming anyway. Not altogether, but mostly. She wanted to tell her that. She wanted to say more than give it. She wanted to ask her what she meant about bringing something into the house. 2 nights later, Lizzie knew. 2 nights later, when Drell finally took what he had been lusting after for so long, Lizzie understood that something that had been brought into the house was her.